I wrote this 6.5 years ago in one sitting, so it's far from perfect. It was written about the day I met my partner, 6.5 years strong. The points about society and such may not make sense, but it's a reflection of how a mind stricken with pain and depression navigates and molds the world around you, how it's seeking validation and fixates on all things negative, it only seeing what confirms what it already feels. Just thought I'd share this, something I'd never have done all those years ago. As you'll discover, the title is partly because she loves beauty and the beast, and partly because it's an accurate representation of where I was at that point. Angry, lonely, and withdrawn. The beauty that resided within the beast. Chapter 1. The beginning of my journey. The date was November the 18th, a cold and dull day without a glimmer of sunshine in sight. The scent of damp lingering in the air with the remnant of autumn's once beautiful coloration beginning to fade. Pathoments once coated with a colorful and warming jacket of leaves now littered with an abundance of what can be considered no less than a physical representation of what lingered inside. An abundance of substance, containing little warmth or life. The once beautiful coloration now lining the streets dead, considered no more than debris to be trampled upon, until it fades from memory as an annoyance of the past, a transition while only tangible to pain. Laden eyes acts as a true depiction of society's capacity for consistency, as what was once heralded for its beauty has now become a hindrance. The once cushioned walk of crunches underfoot has subsided to a mulch beneath the feet, slipping and sliding with each step down what appeared a never-ending road, a journey of repetition and learned behaviors, most of which hardly healthy. The end of the road usually being a social portrayal as a milestone, in this instance only representing a transition to the roaring engines of cars, as society rushes to carry out menial tasks while dawdling towards meaningful and personal accomplishment and self-validification, accompanied by the deafening silence of people as they walk past, so captivated by a screen they fail to see and live the life they've worked and struggled so hard to achieve. There it was, standing tall, lit only by a strip light flickering on and off, like my willingness and ability to conform to a broken, chaotic, and disappointingly under-evolved world. Flickering on and off like the amount of hope held by society as we dwindle closer and closer to less developed times, as the homeless reside only where society deems least a hindrance for the sight of someone struggling is too distressing to witness. But willingness to change is in short supply, but high demand. Painted with a mustard yellow, acting as a transportation point for the masses, while everyone stands head pointed down, and not a conversation within earshot. A detached and cold society where companionship, emotion, and connections are easier formed and displayed through a screen than in person. Finally, after what had already been a very typically dull day in my life, it arrived. Painted a jade green, although I'm arguably or probably very wrong on coloration, and an off-colored white/cream that can only be described as the coloring of blinds in a heavy smoker's house, except coded in social diversity in which conversation should never be in short supply, with such impressive amounts of individuality residing under one roof for even the shortest while, yet society falls silent. Although falling victim to my own criticism, the music blurring through my earphones subtracted from what was a painful and so far mentally understimulating journey until I arrived at my destination. Removing myself from the dust-laden seat, crouching as I walked down an aisle of social isolation and judgment as eyes leer when passing by, checking my phone for messages, looking for an update on what would undeniably be a pivotal point in my life. It dinged, that being the default messaging audio notification of an iPhone. In hindsight, I should have anticipated that such an irritating sound could change my life, or at the very least my perspective on it. The message read, "I'm walking down the shops now, XXXX." Such a basic sentence was about to change my perception of life, my perception of myself. I sat staring at my screen, half in excitement for a situation I had hoped would happen for a long time, and half in worried that it would evolve into something bigger than I could control. Something bigger than just me, as an individual. I composed myself, replying only, "I'm there now. See you soon, XXXX," failing to acknowledge that I had just made one of the best decisions in my life. All by twiddling my thumbs and pressing send, causing the materialization of what would be the most meaningful and intimate connection forged from an entirely virtual world. A connection I had yet to realize would form into an unbreakable bond had begun to form through the screen that society is so captivated by, providing an insight that I had long lost, that nothing can be all bad, just as it can't be all good. It dinged, a second message saying nothing more or less than, "I can see you now, XXXX." I had never expected words on a screen to have such a deep meaning to myself as an individual who had spent a quarter of a century hiding in the shadows, as it dinged and begun my transition into the light. Chapter 3. There I stood boarded up, shutters down or partially run down. There I stood, alongside the row of shops so carefully constructed and carelessly dismissed by time, as they stand dated, discolored and disfigured beyond its former stature and strength as the corners and converging point of communities. Neglected by those elected to protect our way of life, the very thing men, women, and children gave, lost, or are in service for. In a world so backwards, we protect immaterial ideals to the appeals of those promising everything yet delivering nothing. There I stood, patiently waiting. There I stood with a glimmer of hope in my eye and an eagerness to dismiss the potential of purity in such a dark and corrupt world. Cognitive dissonance is the term when you're conflicted, which I always am, hoping for better days, but so used to carrying the emotional anchor of pain and disappointment, unable at this point to accept the potential for better days. There I stood unknowingly waiting as better times and the severing of the emotional anchor of longing, loneliness, and isolation approached me in the form of perfection. There I stood, 25 years of damage and broken beyond repair, until I seen her smile from the distance, a smile that would grow to wash away all of my longing for connection and habitual suffering, a smile that I would crave increasingly more with each passing day. Chapter 4. There she stood, small and petite in stature, but every bit of perfection. Small in size, but large in personality. Physically petite, but as I'd later find one of the strongest and kindest people to grace your life with their presence. Greeted by a smile so perfect the clouds parted, allowing the once gloomy streets to reverberate the light and warmth I'd lost so long ago. A smile so innocent and pure it brought the debris of autumn back to life, turned a dwindling and dying annoyance into something only a heart and mind so gently touched with pure intentions of love and affection could see. Greeted with a touch so warm it sent shivers down my spine, a gentle reminder that beauty resides all around us, a reminder that it's our ability or willingness to seek it that changes as the world molds us, shaping us in its dark and deceitful image. Nose wrinkled, eyes radiating happiness, joy, and compassion, cheeks rosy red as the bitter cold of autumn touched something so perfect and uncorrupted by the pain that so evidently lingered within both of us. There she stood, in a navy blue jacket, black leggings, and gray shoes there. She stood a beacon of light and hope, guiding back a side of me that I had lost to the pain and anguish so long ago. the sun providing a shimmer of light on her long ginger-tinted locks, highlighting the deep blue of her eyes that provided me an ocean of warmth with every glance. I felt myself questioning, what is this? Completely oblivious to her effect, nothing short of what I need, but every bit more than I deserve. There she stood. In a world so absorbed in vanity, it is forgotten that compassion is the most attractive quality, which she has in abundance. There she stood, the perfect contours of her body welcoming my gaze while trying not to stare, so inviting and accommodating to a person who's no stranger to loneliness, yet felt engulfed in her presence, so much so, sides to me that had been long forgotten, re-emerged, taking a once fractured and broken soul and mending it with every passing second. There she stood, unknowingly completing the missing parts to me. There she stood wrapped in my arms as the gloominess of the world subsided and my mind no longer held ransom to the pain and anguish I learned to accept. There she stood, providing me the strength and reason to build a life and future in a world I once shied away from. Because my heart is far less heavy now, I know that she's in it. What was once a dark, tormented, and fractured soul would later be filled with love through her persistence, compassion, and refusal to give up on me. There she stood, the woman I have grown to love. So captivated by her beauty, the world seems far less dark. A man who once had no purpose is now filled with life. A man so beaten down he refused to acknowledge love until she taught him to love again. There she stood, as I hope she always will.